Hello and good evening, and welcome to you all. I believe somebody has arrived. I'm not sure who you are. You're rather like the ghostly orbit in the back of behind me, which is a light that's leaning against a wall. It is not a supermoon. And hello to Tina Da Silva and to William Park, Paul, Leslie Reese, and Laura and Jill, and Lily and Joe and Melissa and Bernadette and Nicole and Nina and Kaz and Catherine and Pip, Carl and Alex. Hello to you all, and hello to everybody else just joining us. Thank you very much for joining us this evening. We have much to talk about, so I shall begin where we mean to begin. I hope you can all hear me loud and clear. I don't know, but there are already 50 of you here in less than a minute. So thank you. Thank you very much. So today I shall begin with the sensible thing, which is a positive news story, a book recommendation. So today I shall recommend to you a book that someone gave me in the local community here. It's called A Moth to a Flame by Stig Dagerman. Dagerman wrote with beautiful objectivity, says Graham Greene. It's got elements of Hitchcock to it. I think I'm going to enjoy this book very much. Dagerman can evoke such emotion in a single sentence, said Colm Tobin. There are some writers, Kafka and Lorca, immediately spring to mind, who come to enjoy the status of saint. Their lives in death constitute statements about existence and its proper priorities. A saint of this type is the Swedish writer Stig Dagerman. So this is published by Penguin, and it was published long ago, I'm sure. Originally 1948, if you can get hold of a copy of that. So I'm going to give this a go, see what you think of it. So A Moth to a Flame by Stig Dagerman, this morning, on a much lower brow level, I finished reading the Jeffrey Archer book, Be Careful What You Wish For, which was volume 4 out of 7 of Jeffrey Archer's The Clifton Chronicles. Now, Jeffrey always leaves us wanting more. So, of course, at the end of the book, something happened, and I'm not going to tell you because you may wish to read it. But I recommend the Clifton Chronicles. I'm definitely going to be looking for the next volume. I haven't read the previous volumes, but it was easy to start with volume 4. I don't think I missed much by not reading volumes 1, 2, and 3, but I did enjoy it, and it was 400 and odd pages of, light reading, which is perfect for a holiday. So if you're going on a holiday, I think a Jeffrey Archer book is a wonderful thing to take with you. So that's the light-hearted introduction. I'll have something light-hearted to talk about with you later. But here we are. Annette Williams asks, how's France? The temperatures are still sublime and crazy. There are more moths and flies than you can imagine as a result, because they're coming to the end of their summer. But other than that, the old rosé is here, and it's most pleasant to sit here in this little room and looking out onto the water. And Vive la France, says Token Spirit. And, well, hello to you all. Yes, thank you. Paulie found a first edition of The Remains of the Day in beautiful condition in a charity shop. Well, you're very lucky. That's a wonderful find. First edition books, especially when they're signed, are particularly worth keeping. Um, I'm a great advocate of collecting books, especially when they're signed by the author, especially if you have some connection with the author or connection with the story. So, but The Remains of the Day is a wonderful, wonderful story. The book is far superior to the film, but I love the film very much also. I watched the film the other day, but I can't watch anything else from any channel, it seems, because British channels restrict viewing from France now. So that's where we're up to with that. So on that note, I shall go on to the people that caused us to have our British channels restricted. So today, at the Conservative Party conference, not only did they make a bit of a muck-up about their high-speed 2, which will run to Manchester, but it will run on the existing lines, so it won't be that quick. So what's the damn point of that? Yet another waste of time by Dishy Rishi. This man is the modern-day John Major, but with a lot more wonga wonga in his own private pocket. Him and his billionaire-esque wife, they claim to be like normal people, and they've been going on about how they love their Nando's sauce, leaking out all that kind of nonsense and gibberish. Tony Blair never got himself into the holes like this. This man wears his Savile Row suit, but he wears his trousers too short. He has his expensive thing to put his coffee in or whatever. And then he pretends that he's down with the people by being able to go to a petrol station, but he doesn't even know how to pay with the card. The man is not a great PR operator. He doesn't have a great man like Alistair Campbell or Sir Bernard Ingham behind him who could actually help organize him. His spin doctors are a bag of bilge. From the Hornet's Nest blog, which is a wonderful blog written by somebody I know of from Kensington and Chelsea, rightly criticised Dishy Rishi's sidekicks as being scruff bags and utter waste of space, people who have no idea how to dress, let alone how to probably even write a letter. And on that blog, and I urge you, have a look at the From the Hornet's Nest blog. This man calls himself The Dane. That's his pseudonym. And this particular person, and I believe it is a man, criticises mostly Kensington and Chelsea Council. He criticises the Labour people of Kensington and Chelsea Council as much as he criticises the Conservatives. And the wasteful Conservatives on Kensington and Chelsea Council have done some terrible things over the years, particularly in my view, but equally so have the appalling Labour members. But the local MP, she's another one who seems to like to appoint herself lots of chief of staffs. She's not even a senior government minister. This woman is the MP for Kensington on about 25 votes. Felicity Buchan, a woman who used to sit in La Brasserie, enjoying rather a lot of wine of an afternoon and repeatedly telling everyone at high volume how much she loved Theresa May. Felicity Buchan, commonly known as Flicker, is as much use as an ornament. She really is completely boring and ugly, stupid in her manner of doing things. She does nothing. I wrote to her once as a constituent. Did she reply? No. She's just as much use as my MP in the other place where I was registered to vote, Broadstairs, Craig McKinley, the man who loves fracking, the man who my father refers to as a Poundland version of Boise. But today, the people who have excelled themselves at the Conservative Party conference in their true awfulness are two ladies, Suella Braverman and Priti Patel. I call Priti from hell. And as for Suella Braverman, there's no bravery to her. Suella today visited a stand for the guide dogs. Suella stood on the tail of a dog, a guide dog for the blind. Has this woman not realized that, politicians and babies and animals are best kept apart? And quite rightly on Threads, the new alternative to Twitter, or X, as some people call it, someone said, Suella by name, Cruella by nature. Braverman stood on a guide dog. She did that on a stand for the guide dogs. The woman is clearly not suited to being Prime Minister. She may be putting out her pitch, but if she's going to go around standing on guide dogs, she's definitely blind then, says Wendy Palmer. Well, the blind people are far better people, and the lovely dogs are far better than this wicked, evil, nasty woman who once came out with the comment, I dream of the day when I see the planes going off to Rwanda. She is mad. She's completely crackers, whether you agree with the policy or not. If that's your dream in life, there's something very wrong with you. If you go around standing on guide dogs, are you completely nuts? And I've got all the photographs. I shall be keeping them. Well, remember this, viewers. This woman stands on guide dogs. What a cruel, horrible, heartless woman. Meanwhile, Priti Patel danced with Nigel Farage. Farage as in garage. It is not Farage. I'm sick of people calling him Farage. His name is not that. And they sang in what the National, which is a newspaper, called a disturbing clip. They sang along to Frankie Valli's classic, I Can't Take My Eyes Off You, whilst looking completely what I'd call over-refreshed. Nothing wrong with being over-refreshed, nothing wrong with enjoying yourself. But if you are a senior politician who is angling to be Prime Minister, going around dancing like a giggling teenager with Nigel Farage, who is a ragbag of rubbish, is not the look you should be going for, Priti Patel. Priti Patel, you're a moron and you're a fool. One person responded, I've just thrown up my breakfast on seeing this clip. Another flippantly added, I can't take my eyes off EU. That is the one I enjoyed the most. Meanwhile, the respected journalist and someone I truly like, and writer Sathnam Sanghera, who works for the Financial Times, remarked on Threads, Nigel Farage, who has cited Enoch Powell as his political hero, embraced by the first British Asian Prime Minister, after Rishi Sunak said that he would welcome Farage potentially into the Conservative Party. One step forward, he added, 20 steps back. Never felt so depressed about Britain. Sunak really is stupid. The deviant Farage played him like a fiddle. Farage responded, I don't want to join the high tax party. Does this man not have any advisors? Is he a sandwich short of a picnic? What is wrong with this foolish man? He has access to many people. He has surely some sensible advisors. This guy doesn't get it. Farage is playing a game on behalf of GB News because GB News are trying to spin themselves out of the hole because the chief of GB News wants to buy the Daily Telegraph. This is a bigger game. This is not about saving GB News. It is about the owner of GB News becoming respectable and his backers who come from Dubai getting access to British politics. Stupid Sunak falls for the trick. Stupid Liz Truss falls for the trick. And the dancing hyena, Priti Patel, the absolute moron, goes around and sings along to Frankie Valli with him. Is this like something from The Godfather? You know, Donald Trump could be pulling the strings next. You know, that's how ridiculous this is. This woman, Priti Patel, really made a grave fool of herself yesterday. And as for Suella the Cruella, yes, that's her new nickname, Cruella Suella. Terribly wicked woman. Anyway, the Conservative Party conference, you know, they threw out one of their own London Assembly members because he dared to interrupt Suella. I don't like the man. He's called Andrew Boff. I've heard about him in the past, and I've nothing pleasant to say about him. He's a little bit woke and a little bit wacky, but, you know, they're throwing out their own assembly members from their conference when the conference hall is virtually empty. Are they bonkers? Are they off their rockers? Are they deranged? I think quite possibly yes. And Mr. Farage is making the most of it. And they don't even see what's being done to them. They are on the rocks. And they are not going to be coming back from this situation. You know, 30p Lee goes off and makes jokes about Diane Abbott in a bar where it's got transgender suitable lavatories. The irony is not lost upon me. It is not lost upon me, but it is clearly lost upon them. They are a party that is headed for the cesspit, and the dreadful Keir Starmer. Well, we don't want him either. I don't want him. But God only help us what comes next. I fear for this country. I fear that this country is headed the way of complete irrelevance. I've spoken to people here in France who are foreign, and they say to me, you know, what have you done to your country? You know, what has happened to it? It is a terrible place that you've created, and I agree with them. And these are people from all over the world, you know, American people as much as French people and Germans and Swiss and Italians. But this is a terrible mess. Anyway, we shall move along. I shall talk about next the Abercrombie and Fitch story. Now, I haven't been able to watch the Panorama program naturally because of the situation here where I cannot view these things because sadly I am in a foreign territory. But Abercrombie and Fitch featured in a program called The Abercrombie Guys, The Dark Side of Cool, which was on Panorama last night. Now, this was a shop. I think I did have a couple of T-shirts and things from there. Not that I really wear T-shirts very often, but I don't think I was attractive enough to go in their store. But I remember when their store opened in Savile Row, and, you know, they had everything was about, you know, looking preppy and stylish and white. They were very clearly a very misogynistic, toxic company. And I don't need to go over all the details of why they are being criticized for, you know, their past misogynistic thing. There is a Netflix program which you can watch. And this particular program last night was more about the CEO, Mike Jeffries, and his partner, Matthew Smith, an Englishman, and how they sexually abused, allegedly, young men with the help of another man called James Jacobson, a man who had had so much plastic surgery that his nose fell apart and he had to wear a snakeskin patch instead of a nose. And this creep would go around, allegedly, he's now 70 years old, recruiting young people. Now, the toxicity of Abercrombie and Fitch interests me because it links to the Epstein matter, because one of the main people involved in it was Epstein's main friend and backer, the person who helped him in many ways, Leslie Wexner, Mr. L. Brand, Mr. Victoria's Secret. And, I think that there are plenty of stories that would suggest that Mr. Epstein was as involved in the kind of activities that went on allegedly between Mike Jeffries, Matthew Smith, and James Jacobson with young men, as did with Leslie Wexner allegedly, and also Jeffrey Epstein. I don't think Jeffrey Epstein cared about the sexuality of anyone that he did things with. Jeffrey Epstein was an American equivalent of Jimmy Savile. Now, Epstein, I will come to in a moment because we have further developments, but, over 100 female victims, but there have been allegations about male victims. So this links very much to the same story, and it again shows the web of deceit that exists in this group of people. These powerful people thought they could do anything that they wanted. They took advantage of anybody that they could take advantage of. Now, I cannot yet prove that Mr. Jeffries and Mr. Smith are linked to Epstein, but they are linked via Leslie Wexner. In my web of mind map that I will draw, I will add them to the link because the Abercrombie company was very much part of Leslie Wexner's empire. Remember this, Leslie Wexner allowed Jeffrey Epstein to live in a $100 million mansion and gave it to him as a gift. Why would you do that? You don't give someone a $100 million house for nothing unless they do something for you. They were very, very, very close. And Mr. Wexner is refusing to comment on anything these days, but Mr. Wexner is a person of interest, in my view, in the whole saga, and I'll come to why shortly. But this particular program last night featured a young man called Barrett Paul. Barrett's being spelled Barrett, Pall is his surname. He's an ex-model, and I thought I'd look into him. Now, he is a little bit controversial, I will say, himself. He has made all these allegations in this program. He was one of around about 8 people who made allegations, but he has not mentioned previous stories that he's been involved in. Now, Mr. Paul, I have no personal problem with, but, in 2021, December, Mr. Paul made an allegation that he was abused by a photographer when he was a model. Now, I'm not saying that Mr. Paul was not abused by a photographer when he was a model, but he seems to have started a business as a life coach in which he's trying to tell other people how to behave. But then if you go on Twitter, there are numerous accounts of people who say that they've had problems with Mr. Paul. He was talking about minorities and other LGBTQ plus, whatever you want to call it, I'm sorry, I don't wish to insult anyone, but I don't get all this plus what X, Y, and Z and people who call themselves dragons. Sorry, not for me. You know, have many gay and lesbian friends, nothing wrong with that. Trans people and people who are cross-dressers, nothing wrong with that. Be whatever you want to be, but I just don't get all these silly words. There we go. You're entitled to say whatever you wish, but there we are. But he has become a wannabe activist, but these minority groups, to include a lot of female black ladies who have been very upset by him, it seems he himself has rather a controversial past. So before we start to go down the route of this story, which will spiral out of control in the same way as the Dan Wootton story and all the others, I just Googled the name and that was what came up. And I'm quite perplexed at what I've come across about Barrett Paul. I don't know the man, but many of the people said they had met him and they did not like him, and he is going around, upsetting people, and he does terrible things. I won't read out the comments, but they are pretty graphic. They say that he plays the same stereotype that he is trying to stop. And his website shows someone who seems to be a bit of a personal self-promoter. But anyway, I urge you have a look at Barrett Paul. Type his name into Twitter, my goodness, you don't get quite what you expect. So that toxic company have now hired an external law firm, and developments will follow, just as with Dan Wootton, who, according to Byline Times, the investigation is ongoing, and the Sun have referred to Abercrombie as Abercrumble. I think the days of Abercrombie and Fitch, which was once just a simple clothing company, which was turned into a misogynistic mess, and it was anti-Muslim, and the staff, we were told you can't be this and you can't be that, and you have to have your hair shaved off and you have to have this, and you had to turn up at parties and do what you were told by the CEO. But as they said, elitism sold, and they were a $1 billion company at one point. But the toxicity of this man will clearly not help. And I do think it should expand the investigation into Leslie Wexner, because Mr. Wexner is the person I am more interested in than others, because he was the person who enabled the likes of Jeffrey Epstein. Like it or not, Wexner, you were very close to him for very many years, and you allowed him to, and you gave him a $100 million house for $1. It's bonkers, absolutely crackers. So meanwhile, it's just been revealed that the Epstein estate have filed a motion to stop Ghislaine Maxwell making claims against them. Is of the belief that the Epstein estate were meant to pay her legal bills for the rest of her life. It's not been widely reported, but Ghislaine has been seeking millions from them to cover her legal fees. Ghislaine owes $878,000 to law firms in America. From what I'm told, she owes around about £3 million worldwide. This woman is a grifter, a grabber, a groper, a grubby, grimy, gross piece of junk. And she will try every tactic in the book to try and save her skin. But she has not tried the tactic yet that matters, and that is the tactic of naming names. Miss Maxwell has been convicted of sex trafficking women. Who did she sex traffic women to? Why do we not know the names of those who received the women she trafficked to? We know allegations of names, but why are those people being protected? Presidents, politicians, royalty, business tycoons, all the rest of it. We need to know those names. But the Epstein estate have rightly said she has been given basically ample time. She's had 180 days to provide counsel with a response to the court's request as to who her legal representatives will be in this case. They want the case dismissed. I can understand this. The Epstein estate's motion reads, Maxwell's counsel withdrew from his representation over 1 year ago. And since that time, the case has lain dormant. Though the court has granted her ample time since to find new counsel in order to do so, Maxwell has not done so. Additionally, to the extent Maxwell is unable to retain new counsel, nothing precludes from her from litigating her claims pro se, but she has thus far declined to do so. Accordingly, the court should dismiss Maxwell's complaint. I quite agree with them. This woman is playing every little card she thinks she can play. She's like something from a Jeffrey Archer novel that I've been reading. You know, she's like the wicked character in the Clifton Chronicles, who is the ex-wife of the MP. She is a person who is a trickster and a scammer and a deceiver and a disgrace. Enough is enough. Yes, Bambi points out she turned Jewish. Yes, that was so she didn't have to work as much in the prison. She's suitably anything when it suits. This is a ridiculous, stupid woman, and Elaine Harvey is right to say she is wicked. Quite correct. There you go. Yes, she gets to get special communion wine, Helen back. Yes, she gets all sorts of things. The Maxwell woman is somebody who plays tricks. And this latest trick is just yet another example of this scion of a pension pot plundering evil man who stole 500 million from old people, taking advantage of a situation. She is a shameful, rotten disgrace. And JJ, you are quite correct to use the word rotten. Chip Atkinson says anyone can be bought. Well, it's a case of, in her case, she hasn't got any money to pay, allegedly, but she's got a load of money stashed away, I'm sure. Just go to La Hogue, go to Liechtenstein, look into her history. I'm sure the family have means, and they are able to help her if they so wish. If they're so desperate, this family of hers, to help her, why aren't they doing it? And as for the husband, Scott Ball Garrison, he's walked away and he's sold the house in Manchester by the Sea, and that's the end of that. And supposedly she doesn't get a penny from that. And that wonderful man that worked for British Airways, who I won't name because I don't see the point of giving him publicity, is playing the violin and fiddling along, saying, that, oh, she doesn't get any benefit from that. Well, she doesn't really need it. She's in jail, isn't she? And she's going to be in jail for a very long time. And as she can't get herself a lawyer, well, there we go. And as for her strange supporters, I wish they would stop writing to me because they are getting rather tedious, especially one in particular who is a complete nuisance. So I won't even explain the boring trivialities of how he got hold of me, and was given my telephone number, which this is something I shall say to you all. In life, when someone asks for someone else's phone number from you or their contact details, you should ask the person before you give it out. That is the right thing to do. You should not go around giving out other people's contact details, because then you open a can of worms and then you upset the other person, which is what has occurred in this particular instance. So that is enough of that for the moment. But before I finish, what about Jess Staley? What about all the other bankers? Come on, bring them in, deal with it. These people are worthy of investigation. Trump, Clinton, all of them, all those people that went to their island, all of those people that hung around with those two in great lengths of time. Woody Allen, another charmless piece of rubbish. Great. Some of his films I absolutely love, but I don't love him. Very bad, bizarre person in terms of what I've read about him. And, plenty of other of their associates. Come on, investigate them. We need to know the truth of who she sex trafficked people to. I can say this because I'm not on a channel where I'm censored. I will say what I wish. I am not breaking the law by saying these people should be investigated. They are closely linked, and people have made accusations about them. So why are they not investigated? Investigate these things. It's like the case with this Dan Wootton. Finally, the police are investigating. Good. Because Mr. Wootton was using catfishing names, allegedly, Martin Branning and all the rest of it. And this, if true, does not bode well for Mr. Wootton. And it should not be allowed that Ghislaine Maxwell become the patsy for all of these other people. If they have done things that the victims allege, why are they not investigated? And this Wexner man, his house of cards is falling fast, along with Mike Jeffries of Abercrombie and Fitch, who has now been subjected to Panorama and Netflix. And if it is true what went on with him and young men at his mansion in the Hamptons, disgusting. And, well, I hope justice is done. We will see. That is an open investigation. But it does not look good for him. He has disappeared from that company. Wexner is hiding himself away. Wexner is somebody who intrigues me, because Wexner is the center of the web. And the webs are, many. I regularly draw mind maps. I'm not showing you a whole thing because that's a different one, but that is how I start to investigate something. You have to deep delve into connections. And these people are a web. They're like a club, and they stick together and they protect one another. But when when one domino falls, the whole house could fall. And this lot, there's not many people left who want to save them. This toxic bunch of people will rightly be dealt with the way they need to be. Excuse me, there's a dreadful mosquito flying around in front of me. Anyway, So there we go. My next topic is something else that I find fascinating, which is Banksy. It seems that the mysterious Banksy could be about to be named. Now, over the years, I've met many people who said, "Oh, I know Banksy. Oh, I know who he is." Da, 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 da. Anyway, it seems there is about to be a court case involving somebody who could be Banksy, because somebody who was involved with Banksy is suing the artist known as Banksy, a man called Andrew Gallagher, who is considered by The Sun a graffiti pioneer, whatever that means, of defamation. So it could be that Banksy could be named, and I recommend the BBC Radio 4 series on Banksy, which came out earlier this year, which I talked about previously, I think. So go and listen to that series where one of Banksy's assistants talks about how she was treated badly by Banksy. I think Banksy has provided a lot of entertainment to the world. I know a lot of people who've made a lot of money out of Banksy, including art dealers who sold his early works. People I know who are obsessed with buying his works and follow him and are intrigued by the story of his supposed being a rebel. But this man who stands accused of being Banksy, Robin Gunningham, has been rather quiet about it. He's from Bristol, and his wife worked for a Labour MP, Austin Mitchell, who used to be a big media face. I don't know what became of Austin Mitchell, but I think watch the space. Banksy is about to be exposed. So will Banksy be Robin or will Banksy be Batman? That's what we need to know next, isn't it? So watch this space. Banksy, the story, I think, is like the story of Ghislaine. It's a story that's far from over. But the amount of money that has floated around, at some point, it was all bound to be exposed. These kind of stories always end somewhere. They have to reach some point at the end of a train line. It doesn't mean that train doesn't derail and then go somewhere else. But there we go. So that is the case of Banksy. Now, the next topic I wish to talk to you about is the case of a convent in Chelsea, the St. Wilfrid's care home, which is being sold for £50 million. Now, you may say, why would anyone care about a convent being sold? It has been empty since 2019. It housed the nuns and the elderly. It's going to be knocked down and replaced by modern flats. They want £50 million for the building, in which they're trying to get a bidding war going. Knight Frank estate agents. It's situated in Tite Street, which is a street famous for its connections with Oscar Wilde. He lived in the street. And this building next to the Royal Hospital, Chelsea, was home to people in need. And instead now, they'll either build 90 flats or 24 houses there. So there'll be no ordinary people there anymore. Yet another example of Kensington and Chelsea Council disregarding community and allowing profiteering and the driving out of ordinary people from a community. I think that this is totally shocking and shameful, and that this 38,000 square foot building, which includes a chapel, they're going to pull it all down and build some monstrosity of ugly housing that will just be yet another blot on the landscape. This is a shameful disgrace, and that these estate agents, Knight Frank, think that this is a positive move is utterly appalling. Okay, the funds received from the sale will be used elsewhere, but that 50 million will just vanish into admin fees. They'll have to pay a percentage to Knight Frank for a start. There you go. The greedy Knight Frank will be getting at least 1%. That's not a bad fee, or maybe they'll be getting 10%. Who knows what they get. But this is a prime example of a community ruined yet again. It's just like these Airbnb things taking over communities by the sea. In the middle of central London, there should be room for elderly people and people in need as much as there are for billionaires who don't even live there, who come from Dubai and Qatar and all the rest of it. There will only be the people that buy these houses. It will be another example of what I wrote about many, many years ago. I did an article which was quoted in the Evening Standard, and I said, the lights aren't on and nobody is home. People used to buy to live in central London in places like Chelsea. Then they bought to let, and then they bought to leave. And that is why the newsagent closes down. That is why the local shops will close down. Because before, there were all those nuns living there and those elderly people, and they would go around the corner. There was a little local Tesco there, tiny little Tesco. Well, that shop will not be used by people who can afford to buy houses built on that site. They will not be sending their staff there because they don't even come to visit. I think that this is a fine example of disgrace in central London, yet again, by Kensington and Chelsea, the Royal Borough of Kensington. Where is Felicity Buchan? What's she doing about this? The MP for the area? Come on, Felicity Buchan, go down there and make a comment. You don't speak about this. You just happen to keep quiet, don't you? Because you're quite happy to be in with all these people. But it is a terrible thing. And Sister Veronica Hagan, who was formerly of the place, said, we are so sad to say goodbye. And I agree with her. This is such a waste of space. Okay, the building might be not suitable anymore, but to build 90 flats or 24 houses there is not adding to anything other than creating, if people do live there, yet more traffic, because they will all drive their cars. They're not the kind of people who will take the underground. They're not the kind of people who will take the Shanks's pony. They're not going to walk on their feet. They are just going to create more traffic in central London if they do ever go there. And that is terribly wrong. So I'm appalled by this, and I think it's an absolute outrage. It's next door to the military museum. I forget what it's called. It's the Chelsea Barracks military museum, or so. I'm not sure of its exact name, but it's right next to the Royal Hospital. And how sad that they will pull down a chapel and a garden of of contemplation for these nuns, and build these ugly houses and flats that just look utterly revolting to me. Yet another example of stale, ruined London. London is being ruined by greed, and these planners should be ashamed of themselves. And these Knight Frank people, if they think that this is a positive news story, shame on you as well. Anyway, before I go, I shall conclude. We're now at 50 minutes. unless you have any questions, so please think of them, but don't send them yet. Today I saw a lovely thing. My old friend Orlando Hamilton is in Vanity Fair in the October edition. He is someone I call Mr. Hectic. He is a little bit up and down. He can be a little bit crazy. Completely bonkers, very positive, though. A lovely gentleman. Most people call him Orlando Bloom because he's a florist. But he said in this particular article, to me, flowers are part of nature's language, and the earth can speak through them. I try to live in full bloom as much as possible, and I believe any home, celebration, or space adorned with flowers and plants is enhanced by their presence. They are good for the soul. He said, here's to flowers, good times, and good vibes, my friends. That's what he said on his Facebook page. And then in the actual article, which is just it's a list of influential people, he added, I saw a quote a while ago that said, a society becomes great when old men plant trees in the shade they may never sit. Think of the wonderful Robin Hood tree here. My work as a floral designer has been born out of my love of nature and the natural world. Enjoy the blooms, savor those good moments, and roll with the tricky ones. I try not to overthink the next chapter. I think that is a lovely sentiment, and I urge you all to consider that. So thank you very much there. Thank you very much. Thank you. I sound a bit like Bruce Forsyth there. If you have any questions, we have a few more minutes, but you would like to be the quiz score taker. Well, perhaps tomorrow, if you could come back, you could be the quiz score taker, Jake. I have the quiz book with me, but I can't do it right now because it's on a different level of the building. So have I read any of Andrew Lowney's books? I've been in touch with Mr. Lowney about his books about Prince Andrew, and I have read Nigel Cawthorn's books. There we go. I don't know who Nicole is, but I don't know where she is. So I'm useless at doing all this blocking. We need our moderators back, but they are elsewhere in the world. So I cannot ask them to do that currently because they're not logged in. But there we go. Am I familiar with David McGowan's work? I cannot say I am, no. I've never heard Weird Scenes Inside the Canyon. No, I don't know it. Do I enjoy the gatherings as much as we do? Asks Joe. I think it's wonderful to chat with you all, and I love receiving all the lovely messages. I just don't have time to reply to all of them individually because there are rather a lot of them, but I try and reply as often as I can, and I try and mention those who have something pertinent and relevant that needs to be said when I can. So will I interview anyone once I figure out the technology? I have this technological person that helps me, but he is currently rather unavailable and proving difficult to get hold of. So I may have to go down a different route. Nicole asks, who wants to block me? Nicole, I don't know who you are or what you've said, but some of the people seem a little upset with you. I don't know. I've not been upset by you, so there we go. Somebody else asks, I won't repeat their name because it's offensive. I'm sure you're a very nice person because you seem to participate rather a lot, but your name is not something I shall read out. Would I take part in a seance? No, I would not. It's not for me. I have been involved with people who've been involved with the Society of the Occult and all sorts of things. I'm not going down that route in my own life because I've had one or two scary experiences of things of that type, but there you go. Each to their own. Well, Nicole, I don't know what. I don't want to get involved in personal rows between individuals on this channel. I realize on another channel, people used to get angry with one another. I would rather this be a place where you can all be pleasant and think about things in the way that Orlando Hamilton has thought of things. Do I believe in UFOs? Personally, no. But that does not mean that I know as much as the next person, but I used to know a lady who was involved with the Rendlesham Forest incident. She lived in Edgerton Gardens in Knightsbridge, and she wrote books about it. She introduced me to somebody called Nick Pope, who is somebody who talks about this rather a lot. But I am not. It's not my thing. I don't go there. It's just not for me. Well, what are my thoughts on the Netflix Jill Dando? You found it offered no new angles, says Jake. I don't see why it was released at this stage when there is no new evidence. It seems a very well. I do see why they released it. Netflix, of course, released it because Netflix wanted to keep the true crime community happy. People who watch true crime are obsessive. I experienced this from speaking at this crime conference on several occasions over the years. Those people who go to those conferences, they make it their life's thing to obsess, some of them, about stories, and they're normally stories of that type. I urge you all to listen to a podcast which I've referenced previously, Nicola Tallant, who I appeared on to talk about Ghislaine, and Nicola did an episode about true crime and said, why aren't people interested in, the young man who was a drug runner who ends up getting killed, as opposed to, the sensational story of Jack the Ripper or whatever else, the Jill Dando story. They want these kind of stories, and they want the staircase murder with the writer and the owl and all the rest of it. They don't want the ordinary story of the ordinary person who also suffers. So I think it's a great shame that people don't actually show interest in, ordinary people who've suffered in life, as opposed to these sensational stories, which probably never will be solved. That hitman, God knows who hired the hitman, but there was obviously a reason that someone hired that hitman. But thousands of people were interviewed in that case. So much resource was dedicated. It's rather like the story of Madeleine McCann. £14.5 million spent on one child. What about every other missing child? This is what I have a huge problem with. It is totally unintelligent and stupid that we waste resources. Why not help people who can be found and murders that can be solved? The murder I've spoken about relating to people in my family that knew, this murder will never be solved. It's so sad, but the murder of Diana Moore, I don't think will ever be solved because her relatives are now dead. So there's no one putting on pressure. The poor person who I know of, Martin Allen's story, the one who vanished from Earl's Court. His brother Kevin keeps trying, but they don't get any help because it was so long ago. And it's so sad. The case of Ben Needham, The mother comes from an ordinary background. She got little to no help compared to Jerry and Kate McCann. It is utterly disgraceful that resources are so badly allocated. But these channels will always make programs that make profit. Sorry to go on about this, but this is actually something that really upsets me. I think everybody is worth the same. We all come onto the earth in the same way. We all leave in the same way. And it doesn't matter whether you're rich or poor, you should be treated with equal respect. And, if you have grown up in a country and you're part of a tax-paying society, we should all be treated the same if we go missing or are murdered. But no, it's not the case. And in the case of Netflix, the story of Jill Dando sells more stories than the story of Jane Doe. Jane Doe is of no interest to anyone because nobody knows who Jane is. So that is the reason, yes. I'm sorry to be so depressive there, but it's just appalls me. Sensationalism sells, says Jeannie. Ordinary does not. Society only cares for certain folk. You are completely right, Jeannie. Genie in the bottle. Yes, you bring it out of the bottle, I would say, completely. Bambi says, check out the Anne Noblet murder. I don't know that one, but I shall keep that in mind. I'll try and write that down when I've finished. Have I ever been bitten by a crab? Asks your 7-year-old son, Jake. I've never been bitten by a crab, but I did something terrible with crabs once, but I will save that for another day. When I was staying somewhere and I got hold of a master key and we had a beach and at a holiday park, and my sister and I did some terrible things to some poor holiday makers by paying them a visit with some of those things. But that's a story for another day. There we are. So I don't know how we got onto crabs, but there you go. Angela says, I won't ask you the type of crabs you're talking. They were just little crabs from the beach in Devon, and they did a bit of damage, I can tell you that. There we go. Your son loves my watching. Yes, thank you for your message, Jake. You are a generous soul, and I thank you for your message. And I did respond to your message, but I never heard from you directly. But you are welcome to contact me about the matters you have raised on the email that I gave you, but maybe you didn't read that. There we go. Do I like Reg Dwight, Elton John? I think most of you will gather I don't particularly like him. I don't like his behavior, his involvement with the likes of Prince Harry, his meddling. I think the man is a great musician, but I don't like him as a person, and I certainly don't like his titleless husband. He is a complete Burke. But there we go. Next question is, right, I'm causing mayhem. Oh, well, I don't think so. As far as I'm aware, I haven't caused any mayhem yet this evening, but cheers to mayhem, cheers to murder, and cheers to mystery. And that's what June and I love to do together. June loves Boris and June loves Brexit, and I loathe Boris and I loathe Brexit. And that's why I enjoyed making the programs with her, and when I go back to Broadstairs, I will be making another one. June, I hope, is doing well because she is a wonderful lady and great company, and it was very kind of her to come and make a program with me. I'm sure we'll have many other guests in due course, but the one with her was particularly fun because we are of such differing views. Anyway, I shall have to say thank you very much to you all. We've had 1 hour and 5 minutes, and it's time for me to go to bed because It is 11 o'clock here. It's only 10 o'clock with you in England. Um, and I wish you all a happy evening and good night and good gardening, and cheers to you all. Take care, sleep well, and as Jill Dando would say, don't have nightmares.